Missed an episode of your favorite podcast? Choose from over a decade of content in our archives, not just the latest episode. All free at GCNlive.com.
This is your call to action. Get prepared, America. Economy, survival, energy, disasters. This is USAPrepares.com. Informative radio, educational radio. Interact now by emailing instructor@USAPrepares.com or text at 434-390-7953. Class, please take your seats. Now, your instructor, Vincent Finelli.
Everyone all set, cocked, locked. Here we go. Your dial set correctly to USA Prepares. Thank you for being in class with us. We're delighted you're here. We broadcast 2 hours per day, Monday through Friday, 9 a.m. through 11 a.m. Central Time. If you'd like to call us, we'll pay for the call. 866-582-9933, 866-582-9933. Telephone listen line is up and running, 605-477-3249. John is engineering the broadcast in Minnesota at GCN. I'm Vincent Finelli. Today, you're going to meet your newest instructor. And for those of you new to the class, there are over 200 of us here at USA Prepares. And we are innovators, dentists, medical doctors, engineers, CEOs, surgeons, broadcasters, editors, farmers, programmers. None of us is capable of holding down a job. Welcome, Neal Sutz, live in Switzerland.
Hi, Vince. Thanks so much for having me on. I really do appreciate it.
Well, does that describe you, you just can't hold down a job? Is that you?
Well, you know, Vince, it's interesting that you would use such an expression for all of us as instructors on USA Prepares. I think life and words are a matter of what is spoken and what is interpreted. You know, we might say we can't hold down jobs. We create what we do for a living. Me, I'm 48 years old. I started writing casually when I was 14. I had my first major book published when I was 26. And, do I like working for other people in typical JOBs? Absolutely not. It doesn't fit with who I am, and I don't feel that I've ever been able to accomplish what I feel I've been put here to accomplish through working as a XYZ, whatever sort of employee in whatever company. And due to the restrictions, put in there. And I think that, for whatever reason we were all created, whether we're Democrats, whether we're Republicans, whether we're independents, men, women, whatever it is, we all have something to do here. And it's a matter of discovering what it is that our purpose is, grabbing that purpose, and running with it intelligently.
Neal, how old were you when you found out what your purpose was?
Well, I started writing really young. I mean, I was well before I could drive. I was born in New York, in the Bronx vicinity, 1970, and spent grammar school or elementary school, if you will, and high school in Scottsdale, Arizona. So I grew up in the 70s and basically went to high school in the 80s. So I'm kind of an 80s kid, although I'm no longer a kid, and I have 2 kids now. I discovered really early. My first career actually was I was a chef. I was a professional chef. I started when I was 14 years old. I got invited to go to the Culinary Institute of America when I was 15. They asked me to drop out of high school, et cetera, et cetera. And it's cliche to say it was too hot in the kitchen, but it was too hot in the kitchen. And what I found out is that cooking food was great, and I loved eating good food, but it didn't really serve a greater purpose in life. So I started aggressively going after my second love, if you will, which was writing. And I wrote a lot of poetry, wrote a little book of poetry back when I was 22 years old, living in Vegas. Why did I live in Vegas? Like a lot of young guys, fell in love with a girl. She lived in Vegas. I moved to Vegas. The little book of poetry ended up being this book called All Together Now. And this was sort of on the precipice of when the violence in schools was very, very new, the extreme violence in the American school system, which we all know about, unfortunately. And I wrote a book about teaching kids how to use their heads and their hearts, not fists and weapons, to solve their problems. And the book ended up being used as a teacher tool, as a textbook in the Clark County School District back in 92, 93, 94. So that's really when I just dedicated myself full-time to writing.
Okay. And WriteSocial.net. I've heard the commercials on Genesis Communications Network. I've heard the commercials on USA Prepares. That's you.
Yeah, WriteSocial.net. Interestingly enough, I had originally been hired by the original creator and owner, which was the Beatrice Companies Incorporated, which I'm sure a lot of people are familiar with, goes back over 100 years. I was hired to do the coding and build the network, and also to be EVP of Public Relations, get the word out. And through a series of events and talks between myself and the folks at Beatrice Companies, I recently decided to acquire the social media network. Now, Right Social, as it very clearly states, is a social media network for the conservative right. And what it, if you will, what the goal is to give the conservative right a place to speak freely. I want to say real clearly, my position, even though this network is starting to extremely, very strongly take off, is not to slam people. It's to have a place where people on the conservative right can speak freely, and from an owner and editorial perspective, where my company now, having taken over Right Social, can show what the right is doing right. And I find that often in contemporary media, journalism, whatever you will, whether they want to call themselves liberals or conservatives or whatever the title is, titles mean nothing. And words speak, words and actions are two separate things. And I think that in the media, unfortunately, and obviously we know what side of the game I'm talking about here, there's too much time with people ripping apart people that are actually doing good things. Now, the best example and the main reason that I really pushed myself to acquire Right Social Incorporated, which is, the owner of RightSocial.net, and why I own this company and run it now, is because I come from the mentality where if we're going to do something in life, one can often be better at what they do if they have a personal experience in that particular arena. Now, on that regard, there's a lot of talk about the wall. Whatever you want to call it, let's just call it the wall. Now, I spent until June of last year 10 years straight in the state of Arizona. Now, I think we're all geographically aware enough to know that Arizona is right on the Mexican border, and that there are some horrible, horrible things happening because of a free-flowing, unvetted influx of illegal immigrants. I'm not talking about legal immigrants who go through immigrants who go through the process that is legal to come into the United States to get a green card to become a citizen. And can I give you an example, Vince, of what I'm talking about, and just be real frank with everybody?
Absolutely.
Okay. So here's the situation. So I lived in the Phoenix metropolitan area, Phoenix being the capital, on the southern side, but not as south as Tucson, but very, very close to the border. Now, without going into a lot of details at this particular point, although I will be going into a lot of details in further interviews and further discussions as an instructor and any interview I do, I married into a family. And in this family, there was a little boy who at the time was just a little bit less than 2.5 years old.
Did we lose Neal? Yeah. I don't have his number either, but Yeah, I'm sure he'll call back. Class, Neal mentioned being in Arizona on the Mexico border. And several years ago, three of us, three of us.
We lost our connection there for a second.
Yeah. Well, please continue, and then I'll add in what I was going to say about the border.
So, in brief, so there's this very large family. I married into a very large family by chance. They were a Mormon family, so they're rather large. And so there's this little boy who's the nephew in the family who's just less than 2.5 years old. And when you looked at him, he had darker skin, but not very, very dark. So I found out that his biological father had been of Latino origin. And as time went on, I learned a little bit more because I started asking where this biological father was and why the grandmother in the family was actually raising this boy. And this is my perspective, okay? This has nothing to do with color. This has nothing to do with what country a person comes from. This has to do with proper vetting for pro-legal immigration that's controlled. And I know I repeat the word vetting, but vetting is the appropriate word. Who are the people that are coming into America? So as it turns out, this little boy, who's just under 2.5, was the son of one of my ex-sisters-in-law and her boyfriend at the time. Her boyfriend, who was the biological father, still is, although that's the other end of the story that we'll get to, was an illegal immigrant from Honduras. So, interestingly enough, he comes into the country illegally. He hooks up with my ex-sister-in-law. They have a little baby. This is the baby. From 0 to 6 months old, this baby had every bone in his body broken. He was physically neglected, nutritionally neglected, meaning not fed, and sexually abused. Now, I'm not saying that every illegal immigrant that comes into the country does things like this. I'm just giving an example, and I'm talking about the wall, and I'm talking about vetting. Now, interestingly enough, the way this situation was handled, and this was before President Trump took office and is making a strong positive stand for proper immigration into the country and for the wall, is that this man who did these horrible things.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you what, Neal, just hold that thought. We're going into commercial break. We'll be back in just a few minutes. Neal Sutz is with us live in Switzerland. We're talking about rightsocial.net. And, Neal, you were telling us about a young baby who was sexually abused and bones broken. Please continue.
Okay, so I'm going to continue here in just 2 seconds. I just want to let everybody know, if you're looking for Right Social, I'm not going to go into a lot of details on the complexities of finding it. If you want to find rightsocial.net, whatever browser you use, go to your browser line and type in rightsocial.net or www.rightsocial.net. We've had some issues, inexplicable, if you will, concerning certain search engines and us being found. Just so you know, if you want to find us, if you want the place to speak, and if you want to talk freely from the right conservative. So the little boy, long and short, the little boy, fortunately, as a 6-month-old baby, is removed from the custody of this man and who abused him indescribably. The judge in the case said that he had never in his entire 25-year-plus career as a judge seen a more horrifically abused child that had actually physically survived. Now, granted, the child had a lot of brain problems, physical problems, and emotional and psychiatric problems afterwards and still continues to have them. This man who's an illegal, and I want to stress, illegal immigrant who's there getting money from U.S. taxpayers who are paying for his food stamps and any other help he needs, his insurance, who's hooked up with my ex-sister-in-law, this is his penalty, Vince, for doing this to this child. He gets just over 2 years in prison in Arizona, and after his 2+ years are up, he gets escorted to the Mexican border and let free, and last I heard came back again before there was more control over the border. The ex-sister-in-law in this particular situation woman had a lot of issues. I'm not going to, go into her personal situation. Her penalty was getting excommunicated from the Mormon Church. But I'm talking about the illegal immigrant side. I'm talking about the wall. And I'm saying, okay, we're not going to take every person from a foreign country and put them in a box of thought or a box of they all behave this way, they all do these things. That's not true, because America is based on the original people who founded it, the Caucasians anyway, who came over from England and Europe, being quote-unquote immigrants. But we're in a different day and age. We're 200-plus years past the beginning of America. America is not what it used to be. America is getting great again. And I think what needs to happen is people need to grow up and look at the reality of the situation. Because after this knowledge came to me and this experience came to me, I started looking on what on earth was happening in Arizona and on the border, and how were people like this who do horrible things, who were criminals at the base, even getting through and having U.S. tax dollars pay for them to live while they're doing what they're doing. And I found out that there were more drugs, and I'm specifically mainly talking about cocaine, some heroin, obviously cannabis, marijuana, coming up through from somewhere South America, Central America, Mexico, into Arizona, destroying, and I don't think whether somebody's a Democrat or Republican or an independent, we need to debate the fact that it is true that drugs destroy people's lives. I think that's a given, unless somebody is in complete denial and has their head in the ground and doesn't want to look at reality. So then I started looking more into it, and I found out there's more child sex trafficking happening, going as Arizona is the final stop, going into Mexico and then going into Central and South America. And when I started looking at this, I started asking around. I started talking to colleagues of mine. I, at the time, was, long story short, sort of at the end of a period of my career as a writer and activist in the mental health industry. I'd written a best-selling mental health recovery book, so I happened to have been fortunate enough to know a lot of people in the local government, the mental health system, the social welfare system. And I said, how is this happening? We got drugs, illegal drugs, obviously, illicit drugs coming from wherever they're coming through, but ultimately coming from Mexico right into Arizona and then being spread all over the country, but primarily in this case in the Southwest. The lives of the youth being destroyed because of the drugs that are coming in. And we have more children being sex trafficked out of Arizona across the border into Mexico and then God knows where. And then we have people who have not been vetted coming in through the border and coming into Arizona and doing horrific things. And so if we're going to talk about the wall, let's talk about the reality. Again, okay. I am not saying that every person... Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, hold that thought. Going into another commercial break. We'll be right back with Neal Sutz. Neal Sutz is with us, live in Switzerland, and we're talking about the wall. Please continue, Neal.
Okay, so in short, again, I'm going to make it really clear to everybody. Okay, so obviously, I live in Switzerland. I'm an American citizen. I was born in America. My mother was born in Switzerland, so I got dual citizenship. And we'll get into the details of what's going on in Geneva and my life and my family very, very, very soon in the near future. But suffice it to say, what's going on is, the logic behind the wall is very simple. And when President Trump started campaigning to become president, he said, and I'm not quoting his words, obviously, because I'm not a high-end businessman and I'm not a politician. I want to make the economy better. I want to make America great again. And I want to build a wall. He made it very cut and dry, his, the main points of what he wanted to do. Now, you look at the wall, okay, I'm sorry, Democrat, Republican, Independent, it doesn't matter. There's nobody in their right mind who can agree that child sex trafficking into Mexico out of Arizona, California, Texas is a positive thing. There's nobody that can agree with that. That's in their right mind. There's nobody can agree that could be in their right mind and agree with the fact that drugs coming in because there's no wall is a good thing for the United States and is a good thing for the youth of the United States, which, to use a sort of cliche, the youth is the future of the United States. And if they're all drugged out and dead or just drugged out, we don't have much of a future because those of us who are in our 40s, 50s, 60s, and 70s are going to be gone eventually, and if our kids aren't well, there is going to be no good America. There's going to be no America at all. And as far as the, people coming in that aren't vetted, I'm not an accountant. I'm not a CPA even. I'm not a government official. I'm not a politician. However, I can probably look at the economics of it generically speaking and say, economically speaking, it's probably a better decision to build a wall or a wall-type situation to block the border rather than paying the cost of vetting everybody that wants to come in. And people talk about the wall being, it's racist, it's this, it's that. America's the melting pot of the Western world. And there's blacks, whites, browns, yellows. We're all human beings. And if somebody's there who got there illegally, it doesn't matter whether they're illegal and they came in and they built $1 billion business and they're an illegal immigrant, or whether they came in like this man did, who hooked up with my ex-sister-in-law, who is an illegal immigrant that fed off the government's money, our tax-paying money, Democrats and Republicans, taxpayers, all of our money, and then destroyed a child's life. Now, and what it's coming down to for me, and, look, I'm going to stop excusing myself and saying I'm not judging. I'm just looking at what the facts are. This congresswoman, we all know who she is, who, as she's coming into office, a week or so ago, speaks out publicly using the F word against the President of the United States of America. Now, whether it was President Trump, President Obama, President Clinton, President Bush, the other President Bush, it doesn't matter who. There's a certain amount of respect that has to be held towards whoever's holding the office of the most important person in the free world. Period. Now, in President Trump's case, for her to say something like that as a junior congresswoman, to use a four-letter word, the only thing that I can think of is, didn't she have something positive to say about him? Or even if she didn't have anything positive to say about him, doesn't she have anything positive to say about maybe what she'd like to do to help make America great? And if she doesn't want to use the expression make America great again, just make America a wonderful place and a better place than it had become before President Trump took office, which leads us to, so that's just a lack of maturity. And I'm not speaking as a politician, so whatever, I'm 19 years older than her. That is irrelevant. I'm not a politician. That is irrelevant. You don't swear at the president and call for an impeachment using a four-letter word as you're walking into Congress. It just seems to me, not as a judgment, as a fact, incredibly immature and incredibly inexperienced and incredibly offensive. Now, that gets us into the next thing, which is, let's look back at the last period of time since President Trump became president and why I decided to acquire RightSocial.net to talk about the positive things about what's going on. The economy's in a better place, period. Unemployment is way, 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 way down for men and especially for women. There are many more jobs available than there were before. And the left is arguing and screaming at the right about this $5.3 billion that President Trump wants to start really going after building the wall. Again, Vince, we're adults here. We all know the basic economics of the United States and what things cost. $5 billion is a drop in the bucket. They're not obviously fighting against the money. They're fighting against because they don't want it, because they're calling it racist, because they're calling it, foreigners. And that's not what it's about. It's about protecting America. And I'm saying to people, going back to the situation that I was married into this family, put yourself in the shoes of somebody who's lived seeing something like this. A 6-month-old baby with every bone in his body broken. And by the time he reaches 4 or 5 years old, which is when I really, I knew him because I'd been married into the family, massive psychiatric problems, massive physical problems, massive emotional problems, massive physical problems, internal organ problems, just problems left and right. So I'm saying, the expression, there's a child walking down the street, a teenager, an adolescent, and you say, I wonder what that kid's going to do with the rest of their life. if they're going to become the next inventor of whatever the next great important invention for the world is, the next inventor of penicillin, the next inventor of, whatever it might be, the next Nobel Peace Prize winner. If we save one child by making sure that people that are drug dealers, sex traffickers, criminals, child offenders stay out of America, I think, in my personal opinion, it's worth it from my personal experience and the experience of many, 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 many people I know.
Really ready for some firsthand experience from my side?
Absolutely.
Okay. So I went down to the border, the Arizona-Mexico border, on a 3-day adventure with 2 other gentlemen. Stayed overnight at a ranch on the border. And I got on a 4-wheeler, as we all did, and we rode across this ranch to the wall. Now, there was a wall there, and there still is. And it was about, between 16 and 20 feet tall. It was round pipe. The pipes were cemented into the ground. You couldn't squeeze through them. The pipes were close together, so you couldn't squeeze through them. The only way to get over them was to climb over them. Well, the rancher told us that drugs were hurled over this fence. Now, the fence was only 8 miles long. 8 miles. This was a test. Let's see how this wall works. This was built years ago. And so if you were in the middle of the fence, the middle of the 8 miles, if you went either left or right 4 miles, you would be at the end of the fence. And what's at the end of the fence? A barbed wire fence. 5 strands. This is just for cattle. I'm talking about 5 feet tall, just to keep the cattle from going into Mexico. Now, what the Mexicans were doing in order to move drugs across the wall or over the wall is they built a trebuchet, also known as a catapult. And the trebuchets were used, hundreds and hundreds of years ago to throw big boulders and rocks over castle walls in Europe. Well, so the Mexicans built these, and they would hurl their drugs over the wall. That's what they did. Now, there were Border Patrol agents in these white trucks with green letters. They had a blimp in the air, a dirigible, looking down. But there weren't very many of these Border Patrol agents. And the ranchers saw this. And it wasn't like these were anomalies. They lived every day on the border wondering who was going to be sneaking around in their barns, stealing their possessions, and illegally crossing the border. That's what I discussed with the rancher who lived right on the Mexican border. Now, when I say lived right on the Mexican border, I'm talking about that fence was the end of his property line. The other side of that fence was Mexico. So I wanted to share with you that, yes, there is a wall, but it's 8 miles long, which is nothing in the scheme of things. And the rest of the fence is just barbed wire like we have around our farm here in Missouri to keep the cows in. That's it.
Well, that's just the thing, Vince, is that I haven't obviously seen the designs of what the potential wall is, the full wall. The wall needs to cover the border from one end to the other. And the trebuchet, the catapult aspect, they need to, I'm sure, integrate into the plan for building the wall a system for control that's more effective than it is now, and also a system to prohibit digging deep under, which is a lot of what happens going into Arizona, is that, there'll be a little tiny fence or something, and then, they'll dig a mile back into the Mexican border all the way through under, they'll hit the wall area, and then they'll go a mile into Arizona, and they'll come up. And I'm sure that happens in Texas and, California as well. But it's like, it's not that complicated. And if we keep in our mind, in our focus, it's not just let's protect the United States. It's how about let's protect our children, their futures, and the future of the United States by protecting the United States right now. And let's grow up in terms of how we're going to talk about these things, stop having silly spat, and get down to the hard facts of what's going on, and then get on to the next most important thing for the betterment of our country, right and left, if people will just try to get along with each other a little bit.
Neal Sutz is with us, rightsocial.net, and you just key that into your browser, rightsocial.net, or www.rightsocial.net. Neal, I've seen images of prototypes of the wall, and some of CNN commentators, with the emphasis on the word common, have said that our president, Donald Trump, wants this wall as a monument to him. I think that's nonsense. But I've seen images of the steel pipe wall prototypes, and then I've seen images of holes in the wall cut through, and the text below these images say common wall or common tools cut through the wall. Well, I got to tell you, what they didn't say was, an oxyacetylene torch, which is designed to cut steel, really thick steel, was used in one of the attempts. So it's kind of unbelievable what the misleading media is showing us. I actually prefer the concrete wall. That's the one I would like to see.
I'm a personal fan of the concrete wall myself. Big, thick, and concrete cement, cement.
Yeah,
reinforced. If you look at it too, it's like, what, steel reinforced? You're thinking?
Yeah, reinforced with steel rebar. Yes, and we have a bulldozer on the farm, and I got to tell you, if I ran full speed head on into a concrete wall, I'm going to lose.
And that's the whole point. That's the whole point, Vince. It's like, even look at what's just what President Trump announced. That's the thing that is so shameful about. We have all this incredible modern technology, and why I acquired Right Social to blast this thing out for the right conservative and for the president. The man has barely any place to speak where what he has said is either heard, printed, or been printed accurately, or portrayed accurately, or not cut up and chopped up in pieces and then misportrayed. And, you look at one thing, on January 21st and 22nd, which is in 10 and then 11 days from today, there's the World Economic Forum in Davos, Switzerland, here, about an hour from where I live. And we all know what the Davos Economic Forum, and okay, so it's a controversial thing for a lot of people, and people, there's conspiracy theories. If we forget all of that for just a moment, and we look at all the people that are going to be there, past president, this influential person, that financial person, this person. So what did President Trump say? I'm staying in Washington, D.C., and we're going to get this thing settled. I'm not going anywhere. I'm going to protect the United States of America, and I'm going to do my job and stay here. And he sent a kind, note saying I'm going to be unable to make it. And the implication, obviously, from the media was, okay, so that's him saying, that's President Trump saying that the government shutdown is going to last for at least another 11 or 12 days. It's going to go into the time at the Davos summit. However the media wants to write about it is how the media wants to write about it. But facts being what they are, is that the man stands his ground. And, okay, whether it's a Democrat, a Republican, an independent, although I don't think we've had an independent president in a long time, if ever. We need to do more time looking at what they're doing right, supporting them in what they're doing right, and remember one basic concept. And the basic concept that everybody seems to forget is that the American people voted for him. He is the president of the United States of America. He is the most powerful man in the free world. And if he wants to utilize a national emergency to get the funds to build the wall, he will do it. And he's actually giving more leeway to more people than people even give him credit for. They give him no credit for giving leeway. He can do anything he wants. And he's still although he's being criticized day and night, he has a goal. The goal is not to have the wall as a monument for himself, obviously. I don't know what journalist came up with that lame idea. The goal is to protect the American people and the children of the United States of America to make it a better country that is going to continue to last and thrive. And we need to support him in what he's doing.
Neal Sutz, I want to thank you for being with us. We are just about out of time. Neal Sutz in Switzerland, rightsocial.net. And you're right. Donald Trump gets up every morning, gets beat up for trying to protect our country, and then he gets up the next day and the next day, and he keeps getting beat up. Yes, we need to support him. He's on our side. Everyone all set? Cocked, locked. Hour number 2 of USA Prepares. Stephen Heuer's with us, and if you'd like to call us, 866-582-9933, 866-582-9933. Stephen, you have helped me so much with my health and my challenges, and you introduced me to something that I've been taking, and I let the class know the last time that you were on with me, I'd let them know what has happened. I'm talking about a product that you recommended called Stem Enhance Ultra.
Yeah.
Before
I wanted to hear what you're experiencing too.
I believe it is absolutely, positively working. And so these are gelatin capsules. They're green in color, and they are called Stem, S-T-E-M, Enhance, E-N-H-A-N-C-E. That's one word, Stem Enhance. Second word, Ultra. 60 capsules on a bottle. I took one the first time because I didn't want to take 2 at first. I took one and seemed okay. Took another one, seemed okay. Next day I upped it to 2 at a time. And I've got to tell you, I absolutely believe that I am getting better. Now, everything that you have recommended has improved my health. And so let me just say it this way. I believe that a couple years ago, I got this massive lung infection, and it's very, very difficult to heal, extremely difficult. And, Stephen, you have recommended so many things that I've tried, and each time I try them, I get better. One of them was colostrum. Another one was Synergy 1, which I'm still taking. And I've added to that regime Stem Enhance Ultra. I believe I am still improving, getting better, and I'm doing more and more and more. So at one point in time, a couple of years ago, all I could do, literally, is lie down. It felt like knitting needles. When I explained it to my son, it felt like knitting needles were being pierced in the tops of each one of my lungs. If I sneezed, I would be doubling over in pain just from sneezing. It hurt that much. And it's hard for, I guess I shouldn't be saying these things, but I was in a lot of trouble. I believe I was about 5% alive.
Wow.
Literally. I mean, I was in serious, serious trouble. I was fired by my pulmonologist because I was trying therapies that she did not approve of, nor understand, nor want to understand. And I'm talking about colloidal and ionic silver. I'm talking about colostrum. I'm talking about allicin, garlic, a lot of things that I would ask about, and she had it with me. And it wasn't like I was trying to make her look silly by asking her things she didn't know about, but she didn't like the fact that I was asking. And I got fired by my doctor, which was a really good thing. She really did me a great service. So I've been trying the things that you recommend, and they're all working. And now I believe that the Stem Enhance Ultra is further enhancing the other things that I'm doing. So I can hop on a tractor, I can take being bounced around. I'm not 100% yet. I'm probably at somewhere around 70%, maybe 75%. But that's way better than lying down, feeling like I've been harpooned with knitting needles, and every single breath putting me in excruciating pain. So that's where I was, Stephen, and you've helped me a lot. So
welcome back. I'm grateful. Yeah, you described it well. I mean, I'm grateful that I have the opportunity to help you and anybody else because, having, I think, been the king of suffering personally, I enjoy helping people alleviate their suffering. But, it's the STEM Enhanced Ultra is doing something that it's a different category of nutrition. All the other nutritional topics that I've been introduced to over the years address something unique and essential for the body, but this is sort of like, you could say the highest priority of repair for the body is the level of circulating stem cells. So, it's my condition with the hyperthyroid it's deteriorated over the years where my heart will become in arrhythmia. So it's one thing to have your heart beat the same pattern and too fast and too strong, but that's tolerable compared to when your heart goes into arrhythmia. That's really, really difficult to deal with. And since I've been on this product, the STEM Enhanced Ultra, my heart arrhythmia has gone by like 90% or 95%. It's like my heart's now beating strong and consistent again, which makes it so I feel, like I can live, So I've had improvements that way. Sometimes I'm sleeping again, which is like a big deal because when your heart's pounding all the time, you can't sleep no matter how tired your nervous system is. But occasionally I am sleeping again, which is a miracle, first time in 3 years. And it's all been since I've been on the STEM Enhanced Ultra. But this product is, I've researched a little bit more about it, so I've learned a little bit more about it, and I've learned that the lake that it grows in, it's Lake Klamath, Southern Oregon, is right next to this old volcano. It's like Mount Mazama. That volcano, like 7,000 years ago, it erupted and covered most of the state of Oregon, including filling up this lake with all this mineral volcanic ash. And there's also several rivers that come into the lake, so there's sediment, mineral matter coming in. So it's 30 feet of mineral sediment upon which the algae lives. And this lake's, on average, only 5 feet deep, the whole lake. I mean, you could stand up in most parts of the lake and be, your body will be sticking out of the water. And the algae lives off of that mineral matter in the floor of the lake, and the winds blow across the lake and they stir up the mineral matter, and so there's this constant source of nutrition for this algae to bloom all the time. And the other thing that's neat about it is that it has the ability to harness nitrogen out of the air to make its own protein. So the whole lake is just filled with this algae, and it's basically they've discovered these two active compounds in the algae that stimulate the bone marrow of our body to release adult stem cells, which, by the way, in the past, in stem cell research, all the research was done mostly on embryonic stem cells because they could survive in laboratory conditions and divide and multiply easily. But adult stem cells don't survive real well under laboratory conditions and divide, so they weren't studied a whole lot. So it was believed that only the embryonic stem cells had the capacity to become any tissue of the body. Now we know that the adult stem cells do pretty much the same thing and become any cell of the body, and that the bone marrow itself, when you're young, you have your bone marrow is like a red pulp. I mean, it's just basically a bloody pulp, the whole part of the hollow of the bones. But when you're older, that red marrow gets replaced with yellow fat marrow, and that causes the decline in the production of your own stem cells. So people have their optimum 100% stem cell level when they're about 20, and then by age 35 it declines by 50%, and by age 65 it's declined by 90%. And so one of the reasons why people's conditions don't, repair or heal is because of the reduced level of stem cells. So this product, when you take it, has been proven to increase stem cells by 34% in your blood within 2 hours of taking 2 capsules, which is kind of amazing because they've done the research, and they find that once the stem cells are released into the blood, they're only there for anywhere from as little as 4 minutes to an hour. And so in my example, when I was trying to heal the thyroid and I went to the clinic in Mexico to get first embryonic stem cells and then later the adult stem cells, that was 10-day treatment each time. And each time I didn't get any improvement. And I know now the reason why is because once those stem cells were put into my bloodstream via IV, they literally were only there for an hour at the most and then gone. So you really have to keep the stem cells in the bloodstream at a higher level constantly 24/7, which is what stem cell nutrition does. So it's a big deal that you can take a supplement, increase your stem cells, go to sleep at night, and repair better than you have in 10, 20 years. And I've got all kinds of testimonies. Did you take time to read the testimonies, Vincent?
Yeah, I read a lot of them. Yes, I did.
Okay. Yeah, so, there's the one case in there was kind of impressive where a woman had a hole in her heart. She had surgery done on it, and then a year later the hole came back. She had to have surgery again, and then she gets on this Stem Enhance Ultra, and over the course of a year, the hole heals up, and the doctor, identifies that there's still a little weak spot, but the hole is healed up in her heart, and then another 6 months or a year later, there's no evidence of any hole in her heart at all. There's a 90-year-old person that was totally blind that is now reading fine print again. There's quite a few cases of macular degeneration where the people are seeing normally again. There's, kidney improvement, people with blood sugar problems. There was one case where the lady that introduced this to me, her father, at 85 years of age, was taking 4 shots of insulin a day. When he gets on this stuff, and his blood sugar was up way above 200 after eating a meal. Now, after being on this for quite some time, his blood sugar never goes above 129 after a meal, which is a miracle. So it's definitely delivering on multiple levels that I've never seen these kind of results in my 30-year career as a nutritionist, So most people over the age of 40 or so. And then if you're young, if you're an athlete, there's cases of people that could do their marathon and recover in record time and perform better in their run. And so whether you're, over the hill or whether you're an athlete, it's something everybody benefits from.
Stephen Heuer is with us. Synergistic Nutrition, SGN80.com. SGN80.com. Class, Stephen Heuer is with me, and we're discussing something that I've tried, and I just want to tell you that Stephen Heuer, Dr. Norm Shealy, and I are all willing to try things to improve our health. All of us. And I share with you my experiences. So I called Stephen Heuer. He mentioned this Stem Enhance Ultra on a broadcast with me. And I called him up right after the broadcast, and I said, Stephen, can I buy that from you? And just send it to me. And the relationship I have with Stephen is I just ask him to send me something. He sends me an invoice, and then I send him a check. That's the way it goes. So I figured it'd be real easy. Stephen, can you send it to me? I'll send you a check. Stephen said, I can't do that. He said, no, you have to enroll. You have to enroll by joining this organization. The name is Cerule, C-E-R-U-L-E. Now, I really do not like multi-level marketing organizations. I don't like them. On the whole. But in order to get this product, I had to enroll. So, and I bought them after I enrolled. And there's a link. If you want to do that, the link is usapreparedness.cerule.com. usaprepares.cerule.com. That will let you enroll, and then you can buy the products for the same exact price that I pay, the same exact price that Stephen pays. Okay? You're entitled to buy them at the lowest price offered. So I bought enough for several months, and it seems to be working. And here's something that I want to share with you. So in terms of my respiration, it's better. And it's only been a short time. I'm thinking that it's going to take several months for me to say, wow. But I'm already saying, wow. This is impressive. So I'll put the link up on USA Prepares so that you can get to it very easily. All right. So here's what I wanted to say about cognitive improvement. Now, I don't know if this was something that you've experienced, Stephen, but yesterday, our son, was working on installing a Cummins 24-valve diesel engine in his truck. What happened was the old one wore out, and he bought one used from out of state, and it sat for about, almost 2 years in the garage. So the oil in the inside of the engine has dripped down, and now when we install the engine over the weekend, he's going to want to crank this thing up and start it. But we'll destroy it if we don't lubricate the rings, the pistons, the cylinder walls, the camshaft bearings, the valve train, the rod bearings, and the main bearings. So how do we lubricate this thing? Now, if it were just a typical V8, we would take out the distributor, if it had a distributor like an old Chevy or Ford engine, put a screwdriver in there, attach the screwdriver shaft to a drill, spin the oil pump, and we would pressurize with oil the internal parts of the engine before we start it. Well, with this diesel, you can't do that. You have to actually take the front cover of the diesel engine off the timing cover, and it's a big job. So I thought about it, and I came up with what I thought was a pretty neat idea. We took an oil filter, a large, old-style oil filter that holds about a quart of oil. We attached it to a remote oil filter mounting device, and which has an inlet and an outlet. We filled the oil filter with 15W40 oil, attached a hose to the oil pressure sending unit, tap on the block, remove the oil pressure sending unit, put this hose that we cleaned out, rubber hose, attached it to that, pressurized the oil filter with 20 pounds of air from a compressor, and pushed a quart of oil through the engine. Then we did it 3 times. And it absolutely worked. Now, the point I'm trying to make is I had never done that before. I had to figure it out with parts that we had, and my son was really anxious to bang this thing out. So I said, well, just give me a minute. And I came up with this idea, and it worked. So what I'm saying is it was something that I'd never done before, and I was able to think it through very quickly. And I have a feeling that some of that is a result of this STEM Enhance Ultra. When we come back after this break, will you tell me, is this my imagination, or are you seeing similar kinds of things in your life with this? We'll be right back. Stephen Heuer. So, Stephen, I told a little story about how I was able to prototype and build something very quickly that we needed, and I think I did it faster than I normally would have done it. Has anything like that happened to you? Not necessarily in the automotive world, but cognitive improvement. Have you experienced that with STEM Enhance Ultra or not?
Yes, I have. For me, it happened really quickly. I think the second day I took it, I was busy doing some basic typing work where I have to go to one page and cut and paste a series of numbers and then a phone number and something else at the same time. So I was being able to memorize one of those series of numbers as well as cut and paste the other and just go to the next page and get 2 things done at once. The other is my memory with names of people. It's just like they're coming to me really easily. Like, today I was just thinking of this person, and I was like going, wow, normally I wouldn't have remembered their name. It's been so long since I've thought of them. And yet it came to my mind right away. So, yeah, I'm definitely noticing that. And in the series of testimonies that you got from me, people have reported improvements with their Alzheimer's and their Parkinson's and even autism in the case of one boy. So it's definitely helping. The old school thought that the brain, once it's been injured or damaged, doesn't repair itself is actually an obsolete concept. it's now known that the brain does repair itself by the level of stem cells that are being released from the bone marrow, circulating in the blood, and going to the brain or any part of the body. It's like wherever there's an area of injury, there's a chemical signal released from the injured area that tells the stem cells to come and deposit in that tissue. So, there's hope for anybody with neurological issues.
Okay. Well, that's exactly what I found. And let me say this, since we're opening the kimono. When I broadcast, I have spiral-bound notebooks. And I turn to a new page and I write some notes down about things I'd like to discuss, points that I'd like to make. And what I was finding is that I would, write a lot of notes. Lately, I haven't had to do that. I write fewer notes. So just a couple key words and boom, off I go. It actually appears like I'm younger. I'm functioning as if I'm 10 or 15 years younger. And when you said the names are coming to you faster, that's exactly the same thing that's happening to me. Names, numbers. There were times, and this happens to all of us, that I would go to do something. Let's say I was leaving the main part of the house, going into the barn. And I go to the barn, and I talk to the dogs on the way. I give the cats a big hug. I talk to the cows. I go into the barn, and I go, what was I going into the barn for? I know I put my jacket and coat on and gloves and hat. And here I am, in the freezing cold. I came out here to do what? I forget. That doesn't happen.
Yeah,
now.
I've had the same problem where I go downstairs and I go to the basement and I go, what was I coming down here for? Yeah, and that hasn't happened now lately.
That's exactly. So now that we let that out of the bag, it's absolutely true, and I believe that it's not just Stephen Heuer and Vincent Finelli that have experienced that. I believe that just about everybody, if not everybody, has discussed that. Now I can tell you that when I was younger, back in the 1960s, I would change the oil and service my parents' vehicles. They had a 1965 Galaxy 500 LTD and a 1966 Country Squire station wagon. That was what my mom drove. And I would service those engines. I would change the oil, and I didn't have to write it down. I knew exactly what mileage I did, what kind of oil I used, what kind of oil filter, whether I sanded and adjusted the points, the ignition points, whether I replaced the air filter or just cleaned the air filter. I knew.
Yeah.
Lately, I have to write that stuff down, and I put my notes in the glove compartment. But what I'm saying is, it's coming back to me as if kind of almost like the 1960s again. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it's nice to have a fully functioning brain.
And I don't know if you remember this, but Dan Quayle was asked to speak before the NAACP, the National Association of Colored People, and their slogan at that time was they wanted donations, and they would show a young person. They would say, "A mind is a terrible thing to waste." That was their slogan. Well, Dan Quayle gets up on stage in front of the NAACP, and he says, "It's terrible," and he's going to use their slogan. But it came out, "It's terrible when you lose your mind."
Yeah.
So it happens to a lot of us, but this Cerule product, CERULE, Stem Enhanced Ultra, seems to be working pretty well for me. Now if you do decide to pursue this, I have a link on USA Prepares. I'm not trying to sell anything, but if you do decide to buy it, I would appreciate it if you would consider clicking on the link at usaprepares.com. You'll see Stephen Heuer, Stem Enhanced Ultra with the link, page number 1, and that would give us credit for your pursuing learning more about this. I stepped up. I bought it because I thought it was that important. I'm going to call one of our instructors, Marty Barrett. Marty Barrett is a young gal that she's in her 60s. She was my college chemistry lab partner in the 70s, and she has Parkinson's. And I am really anxious to tell her what this has done for me, and hopefully she'll have some positive results. She happens to be in a wheelchair.
Oh.
And it's been a challenge for her. So she's had many surgeries, and you'd never know it. She's been on the air with us many times talking about education and how education is failing us at the college level. She's a college biology instructor and has been for all of her professional life, but she's in a wheelchair and has been for years. So, Stephen,
tell her that she can call me if she wants to, and I can tell her, all the things that I know that help that.
Okay, I would be delighted to do that. She's a very kind person, a very warm person, and a very nice person. So, yeah, I will give Marty Barrett your number.
Okay.
And is it okay if she calls you during the weekend sometime?
Yeah. Just I'll give you, call my home number then or my cell number. Yeah.
Okay, I've got them. Okay. Stephen, what else? You talk to a lot of people. You consult, and correct me if I'm wrong, but you've had so many health challenges personally. You've tried so many things that you are now an advocate of the things that worked for you. And and you've studied, you're a naturopath, you've got a degree in it. When people call you, do you share your actual experiences with them in order to help them understand that, yes, they can improve their health? Is that how this works?
Yes. Yeah, I do. I speak from personal experience. I speak from client experience. I mean, one of the things that I have as an advantage over other people is that I'm not just a layperson out there that on the sideline. You learn a little bit of information off the internet, off of whatever your issue is. I've had the opportunity to study, anatomy, physiology, biology, and nutrition extensively and got my degree. So then I've had my own health issues to apply that knowledge upon, and a lot of that knowledge that you learn doesn't work. So you have to keep on finding out what else might work. And so it's like for 3 years I've had this thyroid problem. So, the doctors say, well, you got to take this medication and this medication to control your symptoms, but every time I took them, they just worsened my symptoms. My heart would race even more. So, and then I've gone to naturopaths, I've gone to holistic MDs, and they all say, do this, and it never worked, or it worsened the symptoms. So a lot of my challenges have been like not on the radar screen. When I had my mercury poisoning back when I was 16, and from that point forward, my bowels wouldn't move hardly at all because the mercury killed the nerves in my gut. I went to different practitioners along the way, and none of them ever knew what it was. And so I had to figure it out and remove the mercury from my body and detox it out of my intestines. And then my intestines started to work again. Peristalsis became normal. And, I figured that out on my own. No practitioner told me this is what you need to do. So a lot of the things I've had to figure out have been cutting-edge stuff. Now it's more commonly known after I sort of broke that, overcame that problem. Then the word spread, and mercury became more common for practitioners to understand mercury's role in causing candidiasis overgrowth, or constipation issue like I was dealing with, or any kind of joint issues or memory problems or kidney problems. Wherever it deposits, it damages those tissues. So, this product is a lot of practitioners don't know about it yet. I'm talking to practitioners, and they don't even know about this. So this is a cutting-edge product. And like I said before, now that I understand the subject better, I realize that the highest priority of repair in the body is dependent upon stem cell levels. And so if you can increase your levels in your body, consequently any tissue of the body that's still injured is still sending out a chemical signal to say stem cells come deposit in this tissue, and consequently that tissue can possibly be restored to normal.
So Stephen, I've had pneumonia 3 times in the last couple of years. And I was seen by a specialist at the Mayo Clinic of the Midwest. And that's what this hospital, this research hospital, is known as. And these guys are researchers, and these guys are some of the best in the business. And my senior doctor said, well, let's see if we can keep you from getting pneumonia. Let's see if you don't get pneumonia in the next 3 months.
Wow.
I mean, he was expecting that I was going to get pneumonia again and again and again. I was going to die from this.
Yeah.
Well, he decided that after he was so surprised that I am rebuilding my lungs, which he didn't expect, the repairing, that he said I could be discharged. So, Stephen Heuer, my pulmonologist at this research hospital thought it'd be really good if I could avoid pneumonia for 3 months. I mean, they were thinking that that'd be a miracle. Well, I haven't had it in well over a year, probably a year and a half. And so they wanted to discharge me, and I said, no, I'd really like to stay a patient. Just, I like you guys. How about if I come back in a year? So they didn't think it was necessary because I'm getting better, and I'm getting better because I'm doing the things that you have recommended. And the interesting thing about all this is and I let them know that I'm willing to be their guinea pig. I'm willing to try these things, and if they'd like to know about them, I'll share, my results of what I've done and my experiences with them, because I'm willing to do that. But the thing that's really interesting about me in my particular case is every single doctor has said to me, so are you a smoker? No.
Huh.
Have you ever smoked? No. And they keep asking that. But here's one more interesting thing, Stephen. I have been talking to people across the country, and many of them have a relative, a family member, who has pneumonia right now. I think that pneumonia is way more prevalent than we realize. Do you think that, based on the people you talk to?
I have not had a higher incidence of people calling me with pneumonia, but I do recall that that there's been a higher incidence of people coming into like emergency hospital centers with lung conditions whenever they've sprayed chemtrails, So I'd say that the aluminum particles that everybody's inhaling because of chemtrails would make one more prone to lung conditions for sure.
Mm-hmm. One of our children ended up in the emergency room. He was traveling to Virginia, and he ended up in the emergency room in Virginia. And I was talking to the doctor, and I said, here's what's happening to me, and here's what I've done. He took my recommendation. He was a young doctor who was very interested in what I had to say, took my recommendations, applied them to our child's condition, and our child was healed. And he told me, this doctor told me, that case after case after case of respiratory distress, pneumonia-like symptoms were appearing at the hospital in the emergency room, and they were turning people away because they couldn't handle the number of cases of these pneumonia-like symptoms. And this is in the Commonwealth of Virginia, and this was, several months ago. Not years ago, months ago. So that's why, and I know other people who we've talked to, and their family has had experiences with pneumonia or experiencing pneumonia right now. So, Stephen, would you please give out the information so if those in class would like to contact you, they may?
Yeah. So it's Synergistic Nutrition. The phone number is 864-895-6250 or 888-988-3325. And we're, 9 to 5, Monday through Friday. Love to help anybody out there. I give free mini consults, 15 minutes, just for people to get some of their questions answered and more accurate directions of what to do that they may not have explored. And for people with the pneumonia thing, I was going to say, the colostrum, we have a couple of varieties now. The colostrum is the best thing I know out there to sort of like give you a substitute immune system to knock out pathogens in the body and help the lungs recover. I had a lung infection one time so bad that I drank a pint of fresh raw colostrum, and 99% of my symptoms were gone like the same day. So that's the answer for people with lung issues.
Okay, and class, if you're wondering, I buy the colostrum from Stephen Heuer as well. I do, and here's how I take it. Stephen, let me know if I'm doing this right. When I wake up in the morning, I use Synergy One. I spray it in my mouth before brushing my teeth, and I leave it in my mouth at least 90 seconds. Then maybe 15 minutes later, I make a glass of colostrum, and I drink that down. That's my breakfast. And then at night,
perfect.
I will do the same thing.
Sounds perfect.
Same thing.